Welcome, everyone. We've just gone on the hour. There are a couple more people joining, and we'll let them in as we start. My name is Bianca. Apologies, sorry. My name is Bianca. I'm with the Men Engage Alliance Global Secretariat and have been working on coordinating the Global Symposium. It's great to have you all here. If you are on social media, please do, and you're sharing anything, please do use the hashtag Ubuntu Symposium, or in Spanish, Symposio Ubuntu. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Akshay to start the session. So thank you and welcome again, everyone.
Thank you, Bianca. Thank you. So hello and welcome everyone to the Ubuntu Symposium. So my name is Akshay Chaudhari, and I am currently doing my PhD as a junior research fellow in Savitri in Department of Political Science in Savitribai Phule Pune University, Pune, India. So regarding this session, I have two roles to fulfill in this session, as I am both proposer and a speaker, one of the speaker in this session. So starting with the role as a role of a proposer of the session, firstly, I would like to thank the organizers of the Ubuntu Symposium, the Men Engage Alliance, for giving us the opportunity to present our concept papers in this symposium. To put it briefly, Ubuntu Symposium is a global event about transforming masculinities for gender equality and social justice. It is the third global symposium of Men Engage Alliance, and it follows the two previous global symposiums in Rio de Janeiro in 2009 and in New Delhi in 2014. So, Men Engage is a global alliance made up of dozens of country networks spread across many regions of the world and hundreds of non-government organizations as well as United Nations partners. So the Men Engage Alliance seeks to provide a collective voice on the need to engage men and boys in gender equality and to build and improve the field of practice around engaging men and in achieving gender justice. It also advocates before policymakers at local, national, and regional international levels. So now coming back to the session. So today, the theme of our session is deconstructing the logic of masculinist protection. The panelists in this session will try to build a discussion on how the idea of protecting women and providing a security to women from some kind of threat or danger can indeed lead to the subordination of women in the power relations. It's our great pleasure to have Dr. Mangesh Kulkarni as a chair of the session, and I'm very thankful to him for agreeing to chair this session on a rather short notice. So Dr. Kulkarni currently is a professor and head of the Department of Political Science in Savitribai Phule Pune University and has been teaching political science to postgraduate students in India over the last 3 decades. He has also taught at various universities in Malawi, Austria, and Germany, and he has published over 75 articles in national as well as international journals. He has also authored 5 books, which includes Interdisciplinary Perspective in Political Theory, published in 2011, India in World Affairs, published in 1999, Politics in Maharashtra, published in 1995, and A Terrorist of a Spirit, published in 1992. His most recent book is about global masculinities, published in 2019. He was in the editorial team of the interdisciplinary journal New Quest during 1998 to 2000, and also in that of the Sage journal Men and Masculinities for the 15 years during 2003 to 2018. Dr. Kulkarni is also a recipient of prestigious national and international grants and fellowships, including Indal Fellowship of Asiatic Society, Rotary Fellowship for University Teachers, Erasmus Mundus Scholarship, Rockefeller Archive Center's grants, for many more. Dr. Kulkarni is one of the pioneers in masculinity studies in India. He has contributed to critical masculinity studies since 1990s and has been a fellow traveler of many civil society organizations seeking to involve boys and men in bringing about gender just society. He has been a member of a steering committee of Men Engage South Asia and the India Organization Committee of the second Men Engage Global Symposium organized in 2014 in New Delhi. And he is also currently a national joint convener of the Forum to Engage Men India, a pro-feminist network affiliated to Men Engage Global Alliance. This session is also a result of his constant encouragement to his students to engage in gender studies. Another panelist in the session is Miss Mugdha Hedau. She is currently working as assistant professor in Indian Law Society's Law College, Pune. Before this assignment, she was teaching Political Science at Fergusson College, Pune. She also worked for a brief period with a Society for Promoting Participative Ecosystem Management in Pune. She is also pursuing her PhD from the Department of Political Science, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. Our another speaker in this session is Mr. Shriranjan Awate. He is currently working as an assistant professor at the Department of Political Science, Savitribai Phule Pune University, Pune, and he has published numerous articles in academic journals on Indian politics and election and cinema. His recent article in Economic and Political Weekly, titled as Contemporary Urban Politics, Reflections from Mulshi Pattern and Kala, reflect on two popular movies analyzing changing nature of political economy in urban and suburban spaces. He also regularly writes in newspapers and tries to synthesize the best of the both academic and non-academic world in his work. He is also author of a book called titled as Apla iCard in Marathi, roughly translated to English as Our Constitutions, which reflects on philosophical foundation of Indian constitutions. His most recent book discusses the work of 6 Western 20th century political thinkers in Marathi. He has also translated 2 books for the Sage publication from English to Marathi, which are Indian Youth and Electoral Politics and Measuring Voting Behavior in India. Most importantly, he is a writer and a poet. His novel Single Mingle has won the State Government Award in the year 2017. In this novel, among many other issues, he also dealt with how boys are vulnerable to internalize the objectification of women at a young age, and briefly tries to unfold the boys getting trapped in the masculine identity. So these are I welcome all the speakers in this session and the chair. Now I warmly welcome all the participants in the session, and now I would request the chair of the session, Dr. Kulkarni, to make a opening remarks.
Thanks, Akshay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Okay, after these sort of introductory remarks from Akshay, or rather the way he introduced speakers, it is now for me to very briefly explain to you the background to this particular panel discussion, and I'll be really brief. But before I do that, let me just quickly point out a small sort of, let's say, factual discrepancy in what was said about me just now. And that's about my association with the Forum to Engage Men, which is a sort of a pro-feminist network within India, which is a part of the larger Men Engage network. If I heard correctly, it was said that I am a joint convener, joint national convener of this network. Now, that was true until recently, but about, say, sometime last month, we had sort of another sort of round of elections, and naturally that was when I stepped down. I mean, all of us who were earlier involved in the sort of the governing body, we stepped down, and other people took our place, and that's a very natural sort of process. So in that sense, though I continue to be associated with this particular Forum to Engage Men, of which I am a founder member, I'm not a joint national convener any longer. Fine. Okay, that said, let's come to the background of this particular session or panel discussion on deconstructing the logic of masculinist protection. But even before we go into certain specific aspects of this theme as such, let me just quickly say something about the term masculinity and the phenomenon of masculinity as it is perceived and understood, and as masculinities get practiced in our society here in India and elsewhere in the world. Now, more often than not, masculinities as well as femininities are actually seen as natural phenomena, quasi-natural phenomena. And in fact, I should not have even pluralized those terms. I should have said masculinity and femininity, because more often than not, people tend to have a sort of monolithic understanding of masculinity and a kind of monolithic understanding of femininity. And it's often assumed that, men are sort of, as it were, endowed with certain almost sort of God-given attributes, and women are endowed with another set of almost sort of God-given attributes. And it's often not understood that actually masculinity as well as femininity are plural, that they are in fact socially constructed, which is just another way of saying that different societies, different cultures, in different periods and different contexts, put in place different understandings of masculinity, different and femininity also, and they have different expectations of men and women, and they are assigned often different kinds of roles, and entire social, political, economic structures are built around this understanding of what masculinity is or ought to be, what femininity is or ought to be, etc. Okay? So this is what we simply mean by social construction. And therefore, I always like to invoke a certain definition of masculinity that has come to us from Raven Connell, who is a very prominent senior sociologist based in Australia, and who is absolutely undoubtedly a pioneer of critical masculinity studies. So Connell, he's gives us, I think, a very, let's say, subtle and a very fluid understanding of masculinity, but it's also, I think, a fairly accurate understanding, where he says that masculinity is essentially a place in gender relations. It's not a set of attributes, but it's not even a particular role or even a set of fixed roles, but rather it's a place in gender relations, practices through which people engage that place in gender, and the effects of those practices in bodily experience, personality, and culture. Okay, so you can see that masculinity, therefore, in that sense, and even femininity, therefore, is something that is far more fluid than we imagine it to be, and therefore it is also something that can be and should be, in fact, reconstructed. And why should it be reconstructed? Because more often than not, most societies, in most periods of human history, masculinities and femininities have been essentially constructed within a framework that now we have come to call, thanks to feminists, we've come to call patriarchy. And what is patriarchy after all? Patriarchy is a structure, is a set of values, is an ideological framework which systematically, accords a superior position, a dominant position to men as a class vis-a-vis women. I'm saying men as a class. Doesn't mean that every man in every situation is superior in every society to every woman in that society. I'm not saying that. Okay? So this is what, very broadly, roughly speaking, patriarchy is. And this patriarchy is upheld. See, it has many pillars, it has many props. But one of the pillars of patriarchy is what Reverend Connell has again called hegemonic masculinity. Now, this hegemonic masculinity is actually, to put it rather simply, again paraphrasing Connell, what it means is it's the answer at any given point of time to this question: how do we maintain patriarchy? How do we maintain the collective domination of men as a class over women? This is what hegemonic masculinity is. Therefore, even hegemonic masculinity, that cannot be defined in terms of a set of fixed attributes that remain the same across societies, cultures, periods of time, etc. Okay? So this is our broad understanding of masculinity, within which we are now specifically going to discuss and deconstruct the logic of protectionist masculinity. Now, on that specific theme itself, I will not say much because, of course, that is the prerogative of Akshay Chaudhari, who is going to talk to us at some length about what is meant by this logic of protectionist kind of masculinity, or the protectionist logic of masculinity. I will only say this, that, and it will become abundantly clear when we hear him, that he will be drawing on the work of a very, very significant political philosopher, a woman political philosopher of the late 20th century, who unfortunately passed away, when she was, I think, still, in her prime, in a certain sense. As a theorist, she was still in her prime. She passed away around 2006. That is Iris Marion Young, North American political philosopher. And it is her work on which he's going to draw. And so I'm not going to say much about it now, except now to very quickly outline for you, for your sort of convenience, the structure of this panel discussion. Now what's going to happen is Akshay will take over. He will speak for about 15 to 20 minutes on the the theoretical sort of formulation that Iris Marion Young gave us, which I just mentioned. Then I'll make a few remarks so that we can move on to the next presentation. That next presentation is going to be, it is Mugdha Hedau who's going to make the next presentation. And thereafter, again, I'll make a few connecting remarks, and we go on to the presentation by the third and final panelist, that is Shriranjan Awate. And I will not, at this point of time, let me not disclose to you what it is that they're going to speak on. So I think with these remarks, I'll hand over to Akshay. My sense is that, the sort of timetable that I had drawn up, according to that, we should have actually stopped a little earlier than this. So let's say, Akshay, will you speak for another 15 minutes or so then, if that's possible? Otherwise, in any case, for not more than 20 minutes. So I invite Akshay Chaudhari to address us.
Thank you, sir. So I will start sharing my screen. So yes, sir spoke about Iris Marion Young and his work and her work. So I will briefly talk about that. So the idea of masculinist logic of protection in this session is inspired by the work of Iris Marion Young. She was perhaps one of the most influential political philosophers of her time. In her work, she has given a comprehensive critique of an universal notion of citizenship and distributive justice. Young has created a compelling, complex theories of justice, social operation, gender, democracy that combines an insights from phenomenology, psychoanalysis, and critical theory in a unique way. She analyzed and theorized about the everyday actions and practices and resisted overly abstract ideal theory. We can relate to this statement as I try to show how she brings out similarity in the logic of family and the state in this presentation. So, how generally when we speak about masculinity, we we try to identify it with the negative way, and how men try to dominate women in a forceful way in a relationship or in a household, when men try to abuse women, and uh, which which roughly means that masculine gender, and uh, there is a propensity in a masculinity that tries to settle conflicts with violence. Okay, so and much of the writings in the feminist theory in last few decades aims to explain that bellicosity or its absence by considering the attributes of men and women. So if male has a propensity to seek, settle violence, or if there is no such a propensity or absence of that propensity, that is much discussed in the theory. And the male domination has been related to militarism in the idea of the state. So what I will try to do here, that exposition of a gendered logic of masculine role of the protector in relation to the women and children eliminates the meaning of effective appeal of the secret state that wages war abroad and expects obedience and loyalty at home. So how men in a household tries to protect children and wife, and particularly women in the household, and what is the similarity between when the leader of a country or a nation tries to ask the citizens, tries to promise citizens that he will protect them. There is a similar kind of logic at work in those situations, in these both the situations. So what we know, that there is a dominative kind of masculinity and a benign kind of masculinity. We can understand with this picture that yes, it is obvious that if a man is abusing a women, or harming or forcing women, or then it shows the violent masculinity, and yes, it the domination is very clear in that case. But in the case of means when men try to be benign and protective, or men or try to be chivalrous, then how that masculinity is also problematic, that I will show in this presentation. So in the dominative form, in the dominative masculinity, to master what men try to do is to master women sexually for the sake of their own gratification and to have pleasures of domination. Okay, in a dominative form, it has been theorized that men tend to be selfish, aggressive, and dominative, and these domination then percolates to the institutions, and then we create a male-dominated institutions that justifies the behavior of men. Okay, then what in this form, what they try to do is they seek to enslave and overpower others for the sake of enhancing themselves. And how women deal with this kind of domination is like they resent and resist. Okay, and then there is another form, that is benign form of masculinity, that is the focus of this presentation, that in opposition to dominative form, benign form is associated with ideas of chivalry. Okay, that real men do not try to be aggressive or or abuse women. They are not selfish. Okay, instead they try to protect women. Okay, protect women from threat and danger. They face the world's difficulties and dangers in order to shield women from harm. Okay, they are courageous, they sacrifice and risk their lives. They are responsible, their virtuous man is that of the protector. Okay, so these virtues of benign virtues are of that reflects of that of the protector. And how women generally react to this kind of benign form of protection is they admire and show gratitude to the men, or they are expected to show gratitude. So as seen in this picture, that in the second picture are when the man and a woman going together, walking together, we can clearly see that yes, he is protecting, and they suppose we can imagine that woman is admiring her protection. Okay, So in what happens in this kind of relationship, that in dominative relationship, it is very clear that when that women has to resist, and there is a gender discrimination. But in a protective form, the gender discrimination is not clearly visible. It is masked by the love and the feeling of admiration. Okay, so in return of the male protection in this kind of relationship, the women concedes critical distance from decision making autonomy. Suppose in a family, in a patriarchal family, if a male is anything come, if any danger come to the family, then male directly decides what is the course of action, and the woman will not have any say in the decision making process. Instead, she adores her protector and defers her judgment for the security. That I will be secured in such a situation. So, and he is sacrificing his life, he is risking his life. So I should be I should be some kind of lesser position. It sets women in a kind of a hierarchical position in the family. Then the patriarchal, that's defines the patriarchal gender relation as having unequal power. So when you do not have equal decision making power, then that it of course means that it is a there is a inequality in the family. So here, feminine subordination is equal to submission of a violent bully. No, it is not. Here, female subordination means adoring men for the, male head for the protection. So here, subordination is not direct, but it is masked by the love of a man. Okay, so this is the basic difference. And as this protection provided by men indirectly or structurally in a relationship puts women under subordination. And similarly, if we apply this logic to the state, then states appeal to the role of as a protector of a citizens. What we get the narrative in when the leader promises the citizens that yes, there is an external threat, there is an internal threat, and from to secure your life, we need to take some actions. So in that case, they justify their expectations of obedience and loyalty, and as well as their establishment of surveillance, police, intimidation, detention, and repressive criticism and dissent. That roughly means a security state, and it runs like a protection racket. If you do not want protection, then it is easier to in a one way it is easier to identify you, and in another way that you are always vulnerable to that threat against the protection racket. Okay, so there what is narrative is set is that there is a enemy outside, that defines the mobilization of military as a defender. Then we have large military budget, and largest means of means largest they use the largest means to control the citizens. Okay, then they justify wars by appealing to the sentiments of greed and desire to conquest. They appeal to their role as a protector. Okay, so whenever in a history we see that whenever there is a preemptive strike from the side of the nation, then they it is always justified as a protector. Like in the case of US, when they attacked Afghanistan, the reason was that it is uh, that it is necessary for our defense. So in this relationship, like in family, it demotes members of the democracy to the dependents. Okay, so we do not have accountability when such a threat or pertinent threat exists or a danger exists. We do not have that say in the decision making power. When the issues of security came, citizens somehow loses the power in the in the having say in the decision making process. Their protector position puts the citizen and residents who depend on state's official strength and vigilance in the position of women and children under the charge of male protector. Like in the family, if If the patriarchal head is the charge of the security, like in the state, the official, the state machinery is in the charge of the is the charge of the security. They take the risk and organize the agency of the state. It is their prerogative to determine the objectives of a protective action and their means. So even citizens do not have any say in deciding on the objectives or what will be the law or an institution to have a to and that objectives of a protective action and what means it will take and what will be the accountability in those means. And when the states take the role of a protector, it not only decides what constitutes threat or danger, but also it also says the best way to address the threat. So here also, like in the head, suppose there is a there is a grave threat to the family. There is no discussion on what course of action should be taken. The male head directly takes the action. Like in the state, if there is a pertinent threat, then the state directly takes the action without much consultation with the citizens. So, and in another similarity in this logic of protection is that they suppose how we decide women. So, good women stands under the male protection of the father and a husband and submits to the judgments about what is necessary for her protection and they remain loyal to him. And what is the how they decide the bad who is the bad woman is she is the one who is unlucky enough not to have a man willing to protect her or who refuses such a protection by claiming the right to run for her or run her own life. Okay, so here the bad if it is compared to the state, then there is a there we can see similarity the bad citizen and a good citizen, that there are bad people out there who might want to attack us. The state says that there are bad people out there who might want to attack us. The state pledges to protect us, tells us that we should submit to its rule and decision without questioning and criticizing or demanding independent review of the decisions. So here, what does the good citizen mean? That who is quiet and obedient means the good citizen, who do not want to go independent or who do not criticize the policies on the basis on the policies of security of the state. Okay. So here, then, like in the like how bad women is considered who do not follow the patriarchal logic of a good woman, then here the criticism is when women try to have a say in the decision making power, they like people who criticize who try to have a say in the decision making power are considered as unpatriotic. Their effective protection requires such profiling. Then what we are told by the state that we require profiling of citizens because some people are a threat to the society due to their some attributes like race and origin, and some are not. And citizens have applauded over the it has been seen that citizens have applauded the threatening and surveillance activities of the security regime. We see CCTV cameras anywhere, and we have to consider as a citizen that if when something is decided on security, there is no going back. If the CCTV is installed, there is no way that that state is going to uninstall it in near future. Then they categorize citizens as a terrorist, foreigners, or disloyal citizens. The citizens who criticize them are labeled as a disloyal citizens and unpatriotic, and as a they are seen as a threat to the state. Okay. And this logic continues. Suppose state leader, like in the family, there other men are the threat to the family. Like in the state, threat may be from outside or maybe for inside. So that the states try to rebuild the narrative that there is a pertinent threat. Like suppose in the case of India, like Pakistan and China from the external side, and from the internal side they point out that those who criticize the policies of the security policies on security are the uh, are unpatriotic people. Okay, so the threat resulting in fear. Okay, and this fear, fear, if understood in the society, in a widespreadly understood in the society, then uh, it it evokes citizens to take a decision for a strong leader. Okay, so if there is a pertinent trait, then we have to choose a strong leader. Why strong leader? Strong leader takes a very clear decision. Okay, and then there are democratic values of discussion, compromise, criticism are in danger, and that results in a authoritarian and paternalistic state. And this cycle is unending in international scenario. As one state becomes authoritarian and tries to put a strong leader, then the other also tries to do the same. And it is true to all leaders. This was the tweet of Imran Khan when he was talking about making peace with India. And see how the leader is a masculine. When he tries to say that all my life I have come across small men occupying the big offices. So why small men? What is his distinction of small and big men? Okay, it is true to all leaders. Like we have the narrative of 56-inch chest. Okay, and from the opposition side also there is the same narrative, that when there is a scandal or a scam and he wants the ruling member to answer his question, he suggests that you should be a real man to answer these questions. So this is everywhere. And we can see from this example that how this logic works and how widespread it is, that we have the scheme that save and educate girl child. So save from whom? What kind of protection they did? And do we ask for the education for girls along their protection rather than asking for their empowerment? Okay, so the girl here is defined as a subordinate member of the household, as a daughter who needs to be protected. Another example is that the narrative recently we see in the election of that that the members of some party are trying to be watchmen, but watchmen from whom? Whom they are protecting us? We should always ask those questions. And what for that protection? What are we bargaining? What are the deal for us? Are we really getting the security and by giving our freedom? We then also, for example, I will wrap up briefly, that there is a narrative of helpless, that majboot and majboor sarkar and helpless sarkar, majboot sarkar, helpless sarkar which delays decision by discussion and do not take decisive action. Then majboot is a some kind of a direct action if there is some kind of threat. Like I said, in the case of India, there is external threat from China and Pakistan, and internal threats from religious, as a regime is saying that there is an internal threats from the religious community. Okay. So here it is important to note that masculinity also requires the construction of other for its coherence. If there is no dominative masculinity that forcing women to be at home, then there cannot be a protective masculinity. Okay, so it constitutes other of a dominative masculinity. And what we see in the state, that it also needs some kind of other. They imagine threat. There have to be some kind of imagined threat. So the people will be controlled. That then what we have seen is the demonization of a Muslim other. Here the community forms the other. The community forms the threat. For example, we have seen laws related to marriage, then related to food, then there is citizenship, and then the question of that other is always the loyalty of that other is always questioned. So that threat is always used in the state to control citizens, and we somehow in this logic we become a subordinate citizen. And in this logic, it is not only about fear or a threat. As we discuss in a family, it is also about adoring or showing gratitude to the protector. In the case of state, it is not only about fear, but it is on the other side, it is also about applauding the ruler. Okay. So I will conclude now that now see, in the family, we have in the family, the male head is also similarly to the in the state, that military power. Okay. So we have to question that, are we subordinating others, particularly women, in the name of providing protection? And as a citizen, we should always question state actions in the name of providing security. Thank you.
Right. So thanks, Akshay. I suppose you have completed your presentation. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So in the chat box, I saw some very positive responses, and many have appreciated this particular PPT that you have prepared, and they want you to share it with them if possible. I just saw some of these posts in the chat box. Okay, I think you have fairly vividly presented Marion Young's ideas on this theme. Uh, Let me just mention here, when I read her paper, I remember, she quotes at the outset a statement made by Mae West, one of her very witty observations. The Hollywood actress was known for her very sharp sorts of witty observations. Once, for example, when she was asked what she thought of marriage, Mae West said, "I think it's a great institution, but I'm not yet ready for an institution." If you know what she meant. It's a very subtle play on the word institution. But the particular statement that Marion Young quotes is easier to understand. And it is something that many women, I'm sure many women have experienced this, and not only necessarily actresses. And the state observation goes like this. She says, every man I meet, wants to protect me, but I can't figure out from what. I can't figure out from what these guys want to protect me. Okay, so you can see that this logic of masculinist protection is something that women, many or most women encounter, all the time. And it's not only women in the strict literal sense, but anybody who is placed in that certain kind of a position that in academic jargon we call subject position. Anyone who occupies a position that is analogous to, that is like that of a woman in a patriarchal society. Could be children, it could be even weaker men seen as needing protection, weaker men, and so on and so forth. But, they could be otherwise, for example, intellectuals, etc., brilliant people, but who can't fight, and so on. Okay, so I guess some of you are familiar with this idea that the British came up with, the idea of martial races. That, for example, they considered Bengali men to be effeminate, but they considered Marathas and Gorkhas and Jats and so on to be martial races. See? So even amongst men, there's a further sort of internal hierarchy, and the logic of masculinist protection works even amongst men in that sense. So we must remember that. Okay, having said that, actually we are sort of, according to my timetable, lagging behind by something like 10 minutes. So I really want to take much of your time. And let me now invite Mugdha Hedau to speak on a theme which is obviously within this framework of the logic of critiquing the logic of masculinist protection and in the Indian context. And you know that this logic of masculinist protection specifically, or patriarchal norms more generally, they operate in different ways. One is they operate in terms of certain values, certain customs, certain traditions, etc., which prevail in a given society and which are enforced by communities or by families, so often within schools, colleges, peer groups, and so on and so forth. And there, when these sorts of values get codified, they often take the form of law, as in most modern societies. And we also, of course, in India, particularly, we have this uh, code the Indian Penal Code that we inherited from the colonial period, and we have made some alterations there and adopted it. And this Indian Penal Code also, of course, as Mugdha will point out, some aspects of it very much embody a certain logic of masculinist protection, as do a number of practices and traditions and customs which weigh heavily on our society and especially on the lives of women, restricting their choices, subjecting them to all kinds of coercion. And it's not only women, of course, but also many men who suffer in this process. And so she will talk to us about this. So Mugdha, I would invite you, and if possible, restrict your presentation to 15 minutes. Otherwise, of course, you have your 20 minutes, allotted 20 minutes. So Mugdha, will you take over?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Yes, thank you. Good evening, all of you. I will quickly start my presentation as we have time constraint. So let me just share my screen. Give me 1 minute. I will share my screen and I will start my presentation quickly. Just please just confirm whether my screen is visible. Let's start with my topic. My basic topic is being a woman in India and how masculinist logic of protection affects women. So I will start this entire presentation. I have placed this map which will guide us to understand this masculinist logic of protection in detailed manner. So here, as we are trying to understand the masculinist logic of protection, we should realize this fact that any masculinist logic cannot be understood unless and until we understand the structure in which this particular logic is being shaped. This structure is a patriarchal structure. So patriarchal structure is constructing this logic of protection. This logic is shaped, constructed within this structure by this structure, and this logic is also being used for the protection of the structure of patriarchy. Now, this logic of protection is also helping it to retain its exploitative mechanism, where one gender, most of the time it's male gender, is dominating the another gender, that is female gender. Now, I do understand this fact that there is whole range of queer community also that has been the victim of patriarchal exploitation. But for today's presentation, I will be focusing on the binary of male and female genders only. And we will try to understand how patriarchal structure is functioning with this facade of protecting the women. I will also try to cast some light on the way she is being protected. Now, if we talk about the patriarchal structure, it is not having the single system of oppression. Intersectionality is at play. Now, in India, nexus of patriarchal structure with religion and caste is more relevant to note here. And through such nexus only, such logic of protection is operating. This intersection of gender with religion and caste is imposing double burden on Indian women. She is experiencing the double oppression. She's being exploited as being a woman and as being a woman of particular religion, or as being a woman of being particular caste. Now, let me take a liberty of diverting from this particular topic for a minute and explain briefly about the caste system because many of us, like at least some of us, may not know about the caste system, which is the inherent, one of the inherent characteristic of Indian society. Now, caste system is an hierarchical structure which emerged from the Varna system. There was varnas. There was fourfold classification of Indian society. There were four varnas: Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and that varna system was organized on the basis of occupation. At that particular time, occupational mobility was there. Even eventually, this particular system became more rigid, and like any kind of mobility was restricted. So this particular structure, this particular system has become a building without a staircase. Now nobody can go upward, or nobody can go downwards. So, of course, Shudras, the lower caste people, and of course, there is another category of Ati Shudras. So these Ati Shudras people were never accepted as a part of Varna system, and even they were and are called as Dalits, that is broken apart from the society. So these people used to perform manual scavenging work and hence were seen as untouchables. India has now India has evolved as a society, and untouchability is banned by law, but caste system is still there, especially if and it is operating in a very like subtle manner. And if you go to the rural areas, you can still find the ghettos of lower caste peoples, Dalits. Now, coming back to this logic of protection, and of course, I will be referring to this. This entire logic of protection is operating where this nexus of the caste, religion with patriarchal structure is clearly visible, and it is operating. So, I will be referring to this particular nexus again and again while expressing the experiences of women. Now, coming back to this logic of protection, here we are talking about the protection of women, protecting women, security of women. But then the question is that why we are saying such protection as being problematic. Now, I really don't have any objection to on providing this such kind of protection to women, or for that matter, any gender. But I'm really uncomfortable with this fact that women are vulnerable group that needs this particular kind of protection. I have this objection to this entire situation where women has to carry this extra burden of insecurity and hence needed to be protected. Let me give you one example here. Imagine one girl and one boy are willing to roam around at night times, and that too independently. Now, this boy is having this threat of being robbed. But if you talk about the girl, that girl would experience this threat of being robbed as well as being raped. Due to this extra kind of insecurity, which is always there with women, which is always bared by women, by the way, this extra kind of insecurity is the result of patriarchal structure only. The concern of protecting women is emerging here. So patriarchal structure has created the insecure environment in which women have emerged as being fragile and vulnerable. That is the first problem I can highlight here. And the another problem in this entire logic of protection is that while we are as we are talking about protecting the women, while protecting the women, this responsibility of protection is always on a male gender. Firstly, there is an assumption at the background that women cannot protect themselves. And secondly, protecting men is never considered as the responsibility of women. So clearly, inequality of gender roles can be observed here. And that raised this question that if protection is the entire concern, then why men are expected to protect women only, right? So here the third point which I am talking about is this location of operation of the logic of protection. The locations, when we are talking about locations where the masculinist logic of protection is operating, of course, as we are talking about the protection of women, the first location is where we all feel protected and secure, that is our home or our family. So the first location is family. Then, so as we have seen, this logic of protection even is operational where we are feeling safe, right? As a woman, where I am feeling safe, even there this logic of protection is operating. Now, the second location is our society, our community, as we are like social beings living in a community. Women are also social beings living in a community, and as part of community, should be protected just like other members. The third location is the state. It is considered as the responsibility of state to protect its citizens. Women are the citizens, hence to be protected. And as the previous speaker, Mr. Akshay Chaudhari, has talked about the state and how state is using this logic of protection. I will not be focusing on this location of state. I will be just focusing on the location of family and community. Now, the location of family and community are very vibrant location where we can see the nexus of patriarchy and caste and religious structure. Even if these locations are apparently separate, but they are operating in close proximity and with the similar logic. Now, let me drag your attention towards this logic of protection and how it is operating and why she is being protected. Why she is being protected? The answer to this question is very simple. She belongs to somebody, she belongs to the family, she belongs to the community, caste, and religion. So it becomes the responsibility of men in that particular family, in that particular community, in that particular caste category, or in that particular religion to protect her. Now, in the sphere of family, this responsibility of protecting women is on her father, is on her is on her father, and after her father is on her husband. Husband will protect her after her father, and after her husband, her son will protect her, and that is the general notion. One important point to note here is that along with this sense of responsibility, there is a sense of possession which we can observe here. Here, this very existence of women is acknowledged by her father's name and surname before her marriage and her husband's name and surname after her marriage. So she is considered as the property of a man. Man has the ownership of her. He can use his property in any way he wants to, and he owns her is the general notion. So it's not like protecting her, but it's more like protecting her because she is his property, and other people attacking or claiming his property is not at all acceptable to him, right? So why we are protecting women? Why men are protecting women? Because this woman is the property, and of course nobody can take this property away from that man, right? So that is notion which is always attached to this particular logic of protection. And I can give you the example. In India, concept of marital rape doesn't exist. Okay, it is very hard to digest this fact that marital rape can even happen. So any forceful physical relations or sexual intercourse happening between the husband and his wife is not considered as rape, even if it is against her will, her consent. Even by law, if you see, as Kulkarni sir has also referred to the IPC, so there is one section of IPC in the sense Indian Penal Code. In Indian Penal Code, section 375 is dealing with the definition of rape. Okay, and in that definition of rape, there is one exception which is given, and I will quote here. Section 375 IPC, exceptional section. Um, Sexual intercourse or sexual acts by a man with his own wife, the wife not being under the 15 years of age, is not rape. Now, this definition continues till 2017, and where the Independent Thought versus Union of India judgment came, and of course, Supreme Court has increased this age to 18 years, because 18 years is the age of consent, right? 18 years is when the person is getting major, right? It is not like till below 18 years of age, that person is considered as minor, right? So Supreme Court has increased this age, but still after 18 years, if girl is married and forceful intercourse happen even without her will, it is not considered as marital rape. The term rape is not applied here, right? And the general notion is marital rape just can't happen, right? The consent of that woman is something which is intrinsic. It is just taken for granted, right? So just because she is married to him, even just because she is married to him, it is not considered as rape. So as they are married and he has this right on her body, right? And her body becomes his property, and even after marriage, such sexual relations are happening without her consent and harming her dignity. It is not rape. It is not called as marital rape, and of course, the punishment for that is not the punishment which is prescribed to rape. Okay. Yet another example is also I would like to post here, and it is from Civil Procedure Code, Section 60. Now, if a person fails to pay his due amount and compensation, court can attach his property and appropriate and sell his property, his movable and immovable property. That is this entire section is about, and this particular section is again talking about the exception, right? Of course, some property cannot be taken away because it is the matter of the livelihood of that particular man who couldn't pay his debt or couldn't pay his due amount or compensation, right? So a state cannot take away certain properties from that man. That this entire section 60 of CPC, means Civil Procedure Code, is talking about which property cannot be taken away from a man by the court, by the state. Now, in this particular thing, some properties are mentioned. So, state cannot take away the property of man, including cooking vessels, tools of artisans, stipends to the pensioner, and surprisingly and not so surprisingly, his wife and children. Now, if you see, she and her children belongs to him is something which is visible here. She and her children is something which is considered as his property. So this property needed to be protected from outsider is the hidden notion, hidden kind of motive behind protecting a woman in a family. Now, if we speak about this second location, the community, here also women of that particular community, that particular religion, that particular caste are considered as property of men of that community only. Now, the honor of that community is attached with the izzat, that is honor and prestige and chastity of women of that community. Now, of course, if other communities attacking the women, right? If the other communities attack on izzat of that particular women, on the chastity of that particular women, it's considered as a direct attack on community. and it would harm the honor of the community. So communities are concerned about protecting their women because they want to protect their community and community's pride or honor. Here, her willingness, her desires, her choices would not matter, but community's pride would certainly matter more. I will just give you the last example here before concluding my entire presentation. If you see marriages, right? Marriage is basically a bond where two individuals' willingness and consent should matter the most. But marriages in India, especially in India, are not that simple. Even if it is a very personal kind of affair, community gets involved into it, and more than the unity of minds of a bride or and a groom, their religion, their caste category would matter the most. Intercaste marriages, interreligious marriages are not widely acceptable. In fact, if a girl is marrying to a boy of different religion, sometimes it is seen as an attack on girls' religion because ultimately other religion is stealing the property which originally belongs to the different kind of religion, and same logic is applicable to the caste system. Lots of cases of honor killing are coming in front, are sometimes are getting reported, sometimes are not getting reported even. But there are several incidences of honor killing which are happening, and where the girl and a boy of different caste, mostly one of them belonging to the upper caste and one of them is belonging to the lower caste, are married, then such marriage is seen as an attack on the caste, and sometimes such families who are indulged in such intercaste marriages are outcasted, and some couples are even sometimes are killed. So, Indian state has made several laws banning such practices. And Indian society is definitely changing for better, and that is also a reality. But this reality still exists and cannot be ignored. I will just conclude my entire presentation with this argument that masculinist logic of protection is just a false consciousness which is created by patriarchal structure. It is actually a tool of patriarchal structure. It is actually a weapon of patriarchal structure, which it has created, by using which it is not securing women but actually exploiting and oppressing women in very invisible and a really grave manner. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Okay, Mugdha, you have made a very methodical presentation, and you have been very candid also in highlighting the various contradictions in our society, especially in the domain of gender asymmetry and injustice. In fact, one of the uh, persons who has joined this meeting, Saili Tambe, who's a student of the Department of Political Science here in Pune University, I noticed that in the chat box, she has said that many of the things that you said in a way actually sum up the lives of women, really. So this is a real picture of the status of women in our society. That's what she has said. Fine. So towards the end, Mugdha talked about honor killing, right? And I think you have understood what it's all about. It's not, of course, confined to India. It's prevalent also in other parts of South Asia, unfortunately. And this is one of the themes on which some films have been made. In Marathi, a pioneering film was made, and there is now also a sort of a Hindi version adaptation of that Marathi film also. And so that takes us to the next presentation, and that is by, as you know, by Shriranjan Awate, who, as was said earlier by Akshay, who apart from being a political science researcher and assistant professor at Pune University, he's also a writer, and he has written on cinema. I mean, cinema in the not purely from an aesthetic point of view, but also in terms of how cinema reflects and shapes social life. And here, for our benefit, he's going to talk about how this theme that we have taken up today for discussion, how it is reflected in, I think, mainly probably in Hindi films. I don't know whether he's going to talk about Marathi films as well. But surely he's going to talk about Indian cinema and in relation to this theme that we have chosen. And we know that cinema is a very important medium everywhere, and surely it's particularly so. It has always occupied a very unique sort of position here in Indian society and within Indian diaspora also. And cinema, on the one hand, often tends to reinforce it tends to prettify, glorify existing sort of prejudices and asymmetries and contradictions, but it also sometimes can challenge them. Both these aspects are present in cinema. So let's see what Shriranjan Awate has to say about this. And once again, I would say this, that we are now left with only 35 minutes. So if we are to, so I may not say much by way of concluding remarks, but even then, we need a little time for questions, for the question answer session. So maybe another 15, up to 20 minutes max, 15 minutes if possible. That can be done, by cutting down examples if possible. I don't know. Let's see. It's up to you. Over to Shriranjan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, good morning, America. Good afternoon, Africa, and good evening, Asia. So, right now we are at different time zones, but unfortunately, we are going through the same difficult times. We are going through this COVID-19 pandemic. So, with prayers for a healthy world and expressing solidarity with all the nations, I would like to start my presentation. Thank you, Akshay, and thank you, Mugdha, for, you have made my task more easy. Thank you, Professor Kulkarni, as well. It's really privileged to be here at 3rd Global Ubuntu Men Engage Symposium. And I love this word, Ubuntu. There is one movie in Marathi as well, named as Ubuntu. So the Ubuntu's meaning is I am because you are. That really actually captures the essence of cooperation, empathy, compassion. And this Ubuntu spirit is very important in the era which is liberalized, capitalistic in nature, where individuals are getting isolated from one another. And it is also a pleasure to speak on this with Ubuntu spirit, as I come from India, which is the land of Buddha and Kabir, who taught us how to spell love, how to spell compassion, how to spell empathy. So I think this Ubuntu spirit is very important. I thank all the organizers for giving this opportunity. So as you can see in my opening slide, masculinity and contemporary Indian cinema. This is my topic. As you can see, there is an image of legendary superstar Amitabh Bachchan, and the dialogue is "Mard ko dard nahi hota." That simply means the man doesn't feel pain. He is strong. He is emotionally so strong that he doesn't need anyone else. And as I think some of you must be knowing, that he was known as angry young man of his own times. Especially in 70s and 80s. That kind of macho man, that kind of violence, revenge, that was quite evident in his films. But right now, I'm not going to speak about that period. When I'm saying contemporary Indian cinema, I'm going to talk about the cinema since 1990. Why 1990? Because 1990s, or this decade, was very important in as far as Indian polity, Indian society is concerned, because that changed India's face dramatically. In 1991, India adopted liberalization, privatization, and globalization policy. In 1992, there was demolition of Babri Mosque. In 1991, we actually implemented some decentralization policies and some flagship programs. So in a way, this decade was influential. This decade was significant for Indian society, and obviously those changes were reflected in Bollywood as well. So when I'm talking about Indian cinema, mainly I will be talking about Bollywood. Again, Bollywood is not the Bollywood is not the exact mirror of Indian society, but to much extent, one can say that this industry actually mirrors what is happening in Indian society. So Bollywood is a combination of Bombay and Hollywood. As you all know, that this industry is centered in Mumbai, and this word Hollywood, the word Bollywood is again the combination of Hollywood and Bombay. So Hollywood, this is considered as a celebration of Hollywood on one hand. On the other hand, it is considered as a contempt of Hollywood. It is considered as blind imitation of Hollywood as well. But there is also criticism that this cinema actually is a negation of regional cinema. It suppresses the regional cinema, regional expressions, or like that. But today I won't be able to deal with all that. Even when I'm saying I'm going to talk about Bollywood, considering the India's huge diversity, just imagine those who are from Africa and America. India's population is 1.3 billion, while the whole population of European Union is around 0.5 billion. So this, considering this huge diversity, India is non-comparable with any particular country as such. This industry, Bollywood, is centered around the language, Hindi language, and this is hegemonic language. So even our southern states, they don't agree with the national status of Hindi. So that language politics is built around that. So what are the cultural forces that actually influenced Bollywood? So Gokul Singh and Dishnayke outline 6 cultural forces that have influenced contemporary popular cinema. As you all know, that Mahabharata and Ramayana, these are epic texts, mythological texts, and Bollywood's cultural imagination is developed on the basis of these texts, Ramayana and Mahabharata. Earlier in the late 80s, there were serials of Ramayana and Mahabharata on television channels. So this is one important factor. Again, there are classical Indian theatre, right from Sanskrit plays to folk theatre, Parsi theatre. These 3 theatres have contributed to the cultural imagination of Bollywood. As I told you, that there are some adaptations from Bollywood. Sometimes there is blind imitation, but Hollywood's influence is quite evident, needless to say about that. And in late 80s, one can actually observe that there were some gimmicks like quick cutting scenes, dance, drama, and music. So those musical televisions, they also contributed to the cultural imagination of Bollywood. So right now I will try to deal with some major currents or few films. Of course, it is very difficult to claim that all these films are representative of Indian society, but I will try in next few minutes. When I'm talking about masculinity, and its theoretical framework is explained by Akshay Chaudhari in detail, And now you know about the background of Indian society. So needless to say about all other parameters, as it is explained by Mugdha Hedau. So right now I will be speaking on 4 axes, that is sexual orientation, religion, caste, and body. So these on these 4 parameters, what can be seen in Bollywood, or how Bollywood can be interpreted. This is my attempt. So as you can see, the first film is Fire. In 90s decade, actually, this witnessed a clear distinction between popular cinema and art cinema. Speaking vaguely, this film Fire, directed by Deepa Mehta, falls in the second category, that is art film. These 2 ladies, Nandita Das and Shabana Azmi, both these characters, both these ladies are from a joint household in Delhi, and they are neglected, cheated by their husbands, and finally they find solace in lesbian relationship. So this was like a shock for Indian society. This sparked, controversy over this homosexual relationship. But actually, Deepa Mehta tried. She attempted in 90s decade to deal with this issue of sexual orientation. Many Hindu outfits, they were, offended by this portrayal. That how can someone show like this? But one should note that this kind of attempt was in 90s decade. Now the second film is Dostana. It was released in 2008, and these 2 characters, the 2 major characters, they pretend that they are in gay relationship, but actually they are their sexual orientation is straight, and despite that they pretend. So there is one song which is Maada Ladla Bigad Gaya. So mother's son got rotten. Why? Because his their sexual orientation is gay. They are homosexual. So this film ridiculed homosexual relationship, and this also underlined that the nature of the homophobic nature of Indian society. Unfortunately, there are many films. They are not on the homosexual relationship as such, but their portrayal is as if they ridicule homosexual relationships. So there is heteronormativity. That is quite visible. And the last film is Aligarh, which was released in 2015. This was very, very, very sensitive movie. It actually, portrayed mature homosexual relationship. So this kind of, it actually challenged the hegemonic masculinity and hegemonic heteronormativity, which says that if you are straight, then that is normal. So that kind of heteronormativity was challenged by Aligarh. This was directed by Hansal Mehta. This trajectory can be seen over these 3 decades. So hegemonic masculinity and religion. So the emergence of Bollywood as an international film genre coincided with a thematic shift from macho violence and revenge to a preoccupation with romance and family, with the family evoking the nation. And that is quite visible if you watch the films Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. This was a very blockbuster movie. Again, Dil Wale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. One can easily point out that there is NRI nationalism, because see, when Rahul comes from, he asks to Anjali that, can you sing a Hindi song? Because though you go to, other country, despite that, are you loyal to your soil? And then she sings a song, Om Jai Jagdish Hare. That is very, religious kind of song. And that also underlines that what kind of role Bollywood has played. As I told you that in early 1990s, there were television serials of Ramayana and Mahabharata. And the key characters, Ram, Sita, and from Mahabharata, Krishna, those who played roles, they actually contested the parliamentary elections and they won actually. The simple point is the cultural impact is also there, but those characters, those persons could win the elections. That also underline that what kind of impact is there in electoral arena as well. But at the same time, as I told you, that in 1992 there is a demolition of Babri, and with that, or even before that, we can see portrayal of Muslim man as someone other. As Akshay was trying to tell all of us that as far as masculinist protection is concerned, there is a need to construct someone other. So, what kind of Muslim man is portrayed in Bollywood? He is always someone other entity or depoliticized entity, or he is simply terrorist. Many films are built around that logic, and that's why you can see there is one film poster, My Name is Khan. So My Name is Khan, its tagline is, my name is Khan and I'm not terrorist. So that kind of tagline should be someone has to use to prove his nationality, to prove his loyalty. That's quite unfortunate. But that actually started from 1992, and there is also commodification of Islamic masculinity, and one can actually see there is change from 2014, as 2014 is again a watershed moment for Indian polity. With the new regime, Narendra Modi became the prime minister, and with this new regime, one can see the Hindu hegemonic masculinity. As you can see, there is a film poster of Kesari, and many posters I haven't uploaded here, but one can see that there is a film like Uri, where there is this propaganda. This propaganda is regarding that how Hindu man is going to protect all of us, that masculinist protection is there, and savior's complex that is quite visible. This kind of logic that Hindu nationalist Hindu man, the new Hindu man was portrayed, and that was the nationalist ideal. Even one can see the glorification of military or masculinity in the film Uri. So those kind of things that are quite evident in Indian films after 2014. Here one can see this is a character from Lagan on the upper side of it, and below there is Rajnikant, who is the protagonist of film Kala. So right now I think Chaturvarna system and the caste and the stratification of society was explained by Mugdha, so needless to say about all those things. But there is invisibilization of caste on mainstream Bollywood cinema, because whenever you whenever you watch any mainstream Bollywood cinema, you don't know the exact social location of the protagonist or the key characters, and so mostly the persons who are coming from downtrodden section, marginalized section, they are simply neglected. Nobody considers them, nobody acknowledges them. So now there is assertive masculinity in the form of Kala, and one can actually see that there are many movies right now. One can see that there is a movie called Article 15, which deals with the issue of caste. Now here you can see all these four pictures, you can see there is commodification of male body. So there are stereotypes. Here one can see in the right corner, this is John Abraham with his six-pack ab. So as there are some stereotypical pictures of women, similarly there are stereotypes for male as well, that they should have six-pack ab, they should be fair enough. That's why there is movement initiated by Nandita Das and a few stars. Black is also beautiful. So that kind of bodily expression of masculinity is quite visible in Bollywood. Again, as you can see in these two, Shah Rukh Khan and Salman Khan, these are again two stars from Indian Bollywood. There are three Khans, by the way: Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan, and Amir Khan. These three Khans are prominent figures from Bollywood. So here one can see that how violent or aggressive masculinity is portrayed or is displayed in Bollywood films. So this is Kabir Singh. This was blockbuster movie in 2019, and this was quite problematic because of its toxic masculinity. Hooliganism, drug abuse, again, violence as love. This was portrayed in this Kabir Singh. And even, the director of this Kabir Singh, he said openly and shamelessly that slap is the form of love. This is the expression of love. And now another movie, which is in the right side, that is Thappad. Thappad means actually slap. Directed by Anubhav Sinha. This Thappad is actually slap on the face of Kabir Singh, in the sense that this film is about the wife who has been slapped by her husband in a particular incident, and the film revolves around that. This film actually questions the patriarchal nature, that masculinity, aggressive masculinity. In a way that actually it challenges the hegemonic masculine protection. And so this film is appreciated, though one can say that Kabir Singh was blockbuster, Thappad was not like that. But Kabir Singh is, its popularity underlines the acceptance of hegemonic masculinity in Indian society. Here, I want to show one. Whether you like it or not, I'm going to do that. So irrespective of your consent, that was the song sequence from Ladies versus Ricky Behel. Kya karu, ladies? I am, my adat se majboor, so I'm habitual to do all that because of this patriarchal logic. This is what this song says. Sorry. Here, this is another movie, Pink, which actually says that no means no, because there are many movies, there are many songs which says that when a girl says no, actually it means she's indicating that it is actually yes. She's agreeing the proposal, she's accepting the proposal. That kind of logic is there. So this film Pink, Amitabh is not the protagonist, Taapsee Pannu is the protagonist, and here this advocate is actually arguing for the rights. So whether it is your girlfriend or wife or sex worker, no means no. That kind of logic was established by this film. There are some attempts to deconstruct the hegemonic masculinity. As you can see, few posters of the films, Masan, Dam Laga Ke Haisha, and Tumhari Sulu. Needless to say about all these things in detail, because we are running out of time. So Dam Laga Ke Haisha is a very interesting movie which actually breaks those kind of stereotypes regarding with your bodily expressions. That a woman should be like, she should be thin, regarding her physical appearance or like that. And so similarly, the new man who is more sensitive, who is not violent, who is, feminist in a way, that kind of man was portrayed in the new cinema. There are some attempts regarding that. These are my last, remarks, that Hindu nationalist politics is shaping the image of new Hindu man in mainstream, and this is very sophisticated kind of portrayal is there. In the early years of neoliberalization, the hero of Bollywood was family man. He was in the role of lover, protector, although not devoid of toxic masculinity. Since 2014, a gradual but significant shift can be observed in the image of this hero. Family is no longer his ultimate destination. He is supposed to be the warrior or soldier in the project of building a great Hindu nation, protecting the honor of his women, his community, his religion. This can be observed in historical as well as political dramas released in recent years. So the political climate has brought the man from household to the streets, and he is ready to fight. So there are also, having said that, there are serious attempts to challenge the hegemony of Indian masculinity that have been made in recent years, although these attempts are few in number. There are representation of alternate sexual relationships. Again, these are extremely rare. As I told you that there are some assertive masculinities from the subaltern groups because earlier they were neglected. And last but not least, regional cinema is challenging the hegemonic Bollywood narrative. There are films like Marathi film Fandri or the Malayalam film like The Great Indian Kitchen, which actually challenges this hegemonic masculinity. And actually, so there is alternative masculinity which is being portrayed in few cinemas, but that's not the case, all over the Bollywood industry. So this is the situation of Bollywood. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Shriranjan, for that very comprehensive presentation. And now, however, what has happened is, as I had feared, we are left with only 10 minutes. So, of course, I won't take up much time. I will make only one observation. And it is that from the first two presentations, people might have got the impression that there is this huge, structure of patriarchy. There are a number of practices and norms that uphold that structure, including, of course, very significantly, the masculinist logic of protection, etc. And that this is, a sort of a massive presence that almost goes unchallenged. But as we saw from Shriranjan's presentation, it has been challenged. Patriarchy, including the logic of masculinist protection, these have been significantly challenged from within cinema, but also in real life. Though I think cinema is also part of real life, really, especially in India. So there are movements, surely, and there are also intellectual interventions. Let's not forget that theory is also practice. Theory is also kind of practice, right? Theoretical intervention like that of Iris Marion Young is a political intervention, and in our own small way, what we have done today is itself a political intervention, is it not? It's a sort of intellectual kind of discussion in which we have been engaged. Okay, so I don't think I will say more than that. We have hardly any time left, really. So I do not know what Akshay will now do. In the chat box, I noticed only a few questions really towards the end somewhere. So I don't know how he's going to handle it, but over to Akshay.
So there is one question from Mugdha, but that is more or less answered. But if the question is that, briefly to put it, that how should we challenge the masculinist norms in the 21st century?
Yes. Yeah. So I think here the basic thing which we have to understand is that we cannot overthrow this patriarchal structure. It is not possible to overthrow this entire patriarchal structure in one go, or it cannot suddenly change, right? It would require some time. But we can start with the developing such consciousness about this structure and how this operation is actually at play. Once you develop such, and this is not just the thing which we have to develop, like the entire society should understand, should know about it, then only such reform would take place. Then only there is a possibility of changing this entire situation, I think, right? So developing such consciousness about such operation, right, politically being conscious and then taking the step would be one of the way of I think achieving to this particular what we can say this aim of correcting this oppressive structure. Yeah.
Thank you, Mugdha. So there is one question, and it will be a last question, I guess. We won't be taking any more questions due to lack of time. It is for Shriranjan, and to put it briefly, Asma Khan wants to know that how to look at the in the film Bajirao Mastani, I guess, that how to see the practice of glorification of sati, and how she is also asking that how the portrait of Dalit and Muslim man in the Bollywood movies.
I don't know whether Asma ma'am has seen my presentation when actually I talked about the religion, how Muslim man is portrayed in Bollywood cinema, and I told that he is represented as someone other entity or depoliticized entity, or sometimes most of the times he is shown as if he is a terrorist, or he is potentially violent person, aggressive person. So that kind of things are shown in Indian movies. Again, that I told about Dalit representation, how caste was invisible in Bollywood mainstream. Even right now, caste is invisible, more or less. There are some few attempts like Article 15 or even a movie like Kala. They actually tried to portray that also, caste matters, and those identities should also be portrayed in good light. As far as Bajirao Mastani is concerned, I haven't seen that movie, but as you know that the traditions, conservative traditions, and toxic masculinity, that is being normalized and glamorized in mainstream Hindi cinema, and this is quite problematic because they are not challenging the traditions. As you can see, there are many controversies regarding Padmavat as well. So there are a number of movies which actually glamorize that kind of toxic masculinity, and this is very problematic. When this toxic masculinity becomes new normal, I think we all have to challenge it in our creative endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Shriranjan. So thank you all the participants of the session. Thank you for patient listening, and thank you for all the speakers, panelists, to agreeing to speak in this session. Thank you, Dr. Kulkarni, for chairing this session. And I also thank the organizers of Ubuntu Symposium and the cooperation and thank you for Bianca Marx for cooperating. Thank you. Now I would like to end this session. So thank you everyone.
Thank you, organizers, for this wonderful opportunity, so that we could share our thoughts, and I think we could tell you about something new about India.
That's great. Thank you all. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Akshay. Thank you to all the speakers for joining us today, for putting on the session. And thank you to all of you for joining us. And we will hopefully see you again online soon. So take care, everyone. Goodbye.